A new HBO series highlighting the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre is creating a lot of conversation.
The show Watchmen opens with a violent scene from the past, then moves on to an alternate America set in present day. Well, News on 6's Amy Slanchik joins us live with the story. Amy?
Craig and Lori, there are hundreds of people sharing their thoughts online after watching the episode. Some say they wondered if the scene was truth or fiction because they had never heard of this part of Tulsa's history.
The fuck are we talking about, white man? What are we talking about, white man? So you mad other white men had the decency to say, hey, let's pull back this curtain real quick. Let's show you how we really get down. But let's continue.
The first episode of the new HBO series Watchmen opens with a scene depicted from the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre.
I was absolutely blown away.
Greenwood Cultural Center program coordinator Michelle Brown watched the episode when it premiered over the weekend.
It was shocking, but it was also educational. So there was this feeling of relief almost that people are going to learn about this, some for the very first time.
One of those people is a woman from Texas who tweeted, "My mother is in her 70s and was a history major. She is horrified that she never learned about the Tulsa Massacre."
Are you kidding me right now? This woman taught history and she didn't know about this? And the peon white man is mad at the important white man for revealing all this to people under the guise of exploitation. You exploit every goddamn thing. We're over that part. We're over it. I'm just glad you told the story. Thank you. Thank you for doing something.
I am in my 40s and had not heard of it either. A Chicago teacher says, "My 8th grade students study the Chicago race riots of 1919, but I'm embarrassed that I never considered teaching the Tulsa Massacre."
These are teachers, y'all. Educators, right?
Mayor G.T. Bynum chimed in on Twitter, too, thanking the show for raising awareness. Brown encourages people to visit the Greenwood Cultural Center to learn more. This whole room is dedicated to survivors. It's a place where you can see their faces and read their stories. It's these stories, Brown says, that make her believe what's shown in the episode is historically accurate.
We know there were...
I don't think y'all understand. They took a crop duster and had white men hanging out the crop duster, picking people off from the plane, y'all. They were flying airplanes over the damn city, picking off black folk. Okay.
Planes where our survivors have said that they were dropping bombs. So we believe their oral histories. We believe their testimonies.
Terrible.
They were here. They lived through it.
Brown says while the discussion of whether bombs were actually used has become controversial for some, we can all learn more about Tulsa's past.
And this cracker here is mad because other crackers said, well, hey, this is what we did to these people, and let's turn it into a story. What you mad for, sir? Disgusting. Disgusting. Yeah, I wanted the whole scene. Here you go. Here are the guys they hate. This Damon. That's Damon. This is Brenda. Right? So producer Damon Lindelof. Cord is the writer. He wrote episodes. These are the people you can thank for bringing this shit to life. These are the people that Nerderotic and Geeks and Gamers hate. These are the guy. This guy here is the one that's giving you the Lantern show. Now, I can take it or leave it with the lanterns. I can see why normies like the lanterns. If you're a hardcore Green Lantern fan, you hate it. I'm kind of rooting for Damon Lindelof. I'm glad he's pissing off the hardcore fan. You don't deserve shit. Fuck y'all. Fuck y'all. You the same, whiny ass white dudes complaining about what he gave us for the Watchmen and Lovecraft. Man, fuck y'all, man. Y'all don't deserve shit. So, yeah, Damon, cook. Okay. Now let me get to the other guy, why he hates the Watchmen. I want to hear his take on it.
I really like Watchmen. It's one of the few comic books I've actually read from beginning to end, and I loved every minute of it. Set in a dystopian 1980s America on the brink of nuclear war, it delves deep into the mythos surrounding the superhero genre, how the world would cope with the reality of actual supermen living among us, and the fallout of giving flawed and very human people the power to operate above the law. And I guess I'm one of those weird people who also enjoyed the Zack Snyder movie. Yeah, it wasn't perfect, but overall I consider it an honest and faithful attempt to adapt some pretty challenging source material into a concise and effective 2.5-hour story. And for me at least, it worked. worked. In an era when superhero movies were already starting to reshape themselves into the Marvel mold, all bright and colourful, filled with snarky humour, bloodless violence, and an overriding sense that the good guys would always win, Watchmen dared to be dark and gritty and gruesome. It was a movie that wasn't afraid to explore the deeply flawed personalities behind the superhero masks, and it delivered a thought-provoking and morally ambiguous ending that dared to ask the biggest question of all: who are the real bad guys? So when I found out that a TV adaptation of Watchmen was on the cards, I was initially excited. Surely all that extra screen time would allow the writers to work in all the subplots and backstory that the movie was forced to gloss over. Then I found out it was being written by Damon Lindelof, the man responsible for some of the most disappointing cinematic flops of the past decade, and suddenly my excitement turned to apprehension. Could a TV series possibly deliver on the epic scope of the comic books? How would today's audiences react to Watchmen's complex themes, retro 1980s setting, and the deconstruction of the superhero genre? Would Damon Lindelof be able to stay true to the complex and morally questionable characters like Rorschach, Dr. Manhattan, and the Comedian? Well, the good news is that we don't have to answer any of those questions, because the Watchmen TV show is related to the comic in name only. In reality, it's a cheap, clunky, agenda-pushing piece of trash, set 35 years after the events of the comic book, featuring almost none of the original characters, settings, themes, ideas, or tone of the...
Pay attention. Pay attention. Matter of fact, if you haven't watched the Watchmen series on HBO Max, it's still there. If you haven't watched Lovecraft Country on HBO Max, it's still there. Do yourselves a favor and watch a good show that's well written. For 5 days, how about you don't watch Power? For 5 days, how about you don't watch any Tyler Perry shit? For 5 days, watch The Watchmen and Lovecraft Country. Then come back to me. Let's go.
The Watchmen comic, a show that might as well be called Law and Order Social Justice Unit, because it has about as much to do with Watchmen as J.J. Abrams has to do with quality writing and original ideas. Allow me to elaborate. So the first episode of Watchmen lays its cards on the table right away by kicking off in 1921 with the Tulsa race riots, where two desperate parents try to smuggle their young boy out before they get overwhelmed by the angry mob. Anyway, the parents get killed.
An angry mob. He reduced a historical event being retold, right? And he reduces the people to an angry mob. Okay, come on.
But the boy makes it out alive, and in the aftermath, he finds an abandoned baby and decides to take care of it. Flash forward to the present day, and a black cop gets gunned down after pulling over a white truck driver late at night, sparking alarm amongst the local police that it's the work of a white supremacist group called the 7th Cavalry, who've taken the words of the original Rorschach as some kind of call to arms, and were previously responsible for murdering dozens of cops in a single night, an event that became known as the White Night. Get it? Because they're white, and it happened...
Just pay attention to how I don't know what else to tell y'all, man.
This prompts the Chief of Police, Judd Crawford, to bring in the masked vigilante known as Sister Night to head up the investigation, because she has a very unique set of skills.
Bleach.
Jesus, Damon, that couldn't even have sounded good in your head. Anyway, this is all fine because the police are forced to wear masks in the wake of White Night to protect them against reprisal attacks. They operate in a culture of extreme racial tension, which is inflamed by the descendants of the Tulsa riot victims being paid financial reparations from the government, basically taxing the descendants of the people who once persecuted them. Because...
I know, because the audacity. I know. How dare you? How dare you, even in a fictional show?
You know, nothing says fairness like being forced to pay money to people you've never met for crimes that were committed generations before you were even born.
I know. The nerve. How dare you? I know.
So they bring in a suspected member of the cavalry for interrogation, and Sister Night beats the shit out of him, because I guess that's the thing you're allowed to do now. It's a total mystery why people are so antagonistic towards the police and government in this show. And he eventually gives up the location of a cavalry safe house, so Sister Night and the gang head there to make some less than peaceful arrests. But it all goes tits up, and there's a big firefight, which forces them into a pitched battle against the cavalry. And naturally, Sister Night is able to beat up men twice her size, because at this point, I guess physics, gravity, muscular strength, and body mass are concepts you can just choose.
Well, sir, we've been watching your white women do it for 20 years now, sir. Your white women have cornered the market on this. So please, don't do that. Don't do that. I had to watch Ballerina do it. I watched ScarJo as the Black Widow do it for 15 years. Now I'm gonna watch Florence Pugh. Florence Pugh is smaller than ScarJo. Now we gotta watch Indy Navarrete as Rogue do the same thing in 2028? Man, you wanna shut your goofy ass up.
To ignore if they become inconvenient. Anyway, some of the cavalry manage to escape in an aeroplane, but it's okay because Judd intercepts them in the Owl ship, which he somehow has possession of. Nice to see a completely out of context reference to the real Watchmen here. So he shoots down the plane, but also manages to crash the Owl ship in the process, but everything turns out fine and they have a good laugh about it. And I kind of expected Judd to get shot at that moment, but nah, the scene just keeps going. And going. Why are you laughing like this, you fucking tool? You just destroyed a priceless one-of-a-kind aircraft to shoot down a plane that could easily have been tracked and intercepted later. How did you even become chief of police? So then we randomly skip over to Jeremy Irons, who's lording it up in a country manor house, riding horses and writing plays while butt naked. Because, you know, why not, right? Let's just shove random shit in with no context and assume people will actually care enough to learn the answers. Oh, and sometimes baby squid rain down from the sky. I just wanted to drop that in there without any explanation, because that's pretty much what the show does too. You know you're not writing for lust anymore, right, Damon? So anyway, the gang goes over to Judd's house for a dinner party to celebrate destroying the Owl ship and killing a bunch of rednecks. Then Sister Night goes home to fuck her boyfriend, but suddenly she gets a call telling her to go to the middle of nowhere, and she does it without bringing any backup or protection, even though this is a world where cops are routinely targeted for assassination. But it turns out that Louis Gossett Jr. is waiting for her in a wheelchair, and Judd's hanging out with him, but he's not exactly the life of the party anymore. Ha ha ha! And that's it. That's the first episode of Watchmen, if you can call it that. You know,
and if you caught the Don Johnson's the character's body, you had one shoe on, one shoe off. You're welcome. Let's continue.
I guess there's two different ways to go about reviewing this show, and choosing between them is a bit like having to make a choice between chlamydia or gonorrhea. Either way, it's going to be messy and painful. The more forgiving option is to see Watchmen as simply a generic crime-fighting drama set in a dystopian America rife with racial tension. But even under these circumstances, I'd consider it to be weakly plotted, cheaply shot, badly acted, and ham-fisted, with dull characters and preachy, self-righteous dialogue that sounds like it's been written by a 16-year-old social justice activist with no life experience and limited understanding of adult behaviour. Kind of reminds me of another show, to be honest. The characters are all crushingly dull and homogenous. Nobody has any real personality, no quirks or traits that make them memorable or distinctive. Everyone's just kind of competent and stoic. There's no loose cannons or dangerous renegades to mix things up.
Okay, I've heard enough. I just wanted to hear from their mouths why every time these shows are brought up, they hate even having to utter the phrases of these shows. Okay. So you got peasant white men mad at middle management. That's what it is. This is a class issue. You have peasant white men mad at middle management. That's it. Okay. So what Damon Lindelof and HBO Max did was do their own spin-off retelling, reimagining of the Watchmen. So the first reason they hate this show is because it didn't stick to the source material. That's the first, that's the first red flag for them. Second red flag, you had a black protagonist and Regina King. You got a black Dr. Manhattan, played by Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, right? And it was mainly about this black family, and the black cop and the black superhuman navigating through this, and Rorschach became a symbol to the white supremacists. They took all of Rorschach's teachings and philosophies and turned it into race rhetoric, right? It's a deep ass show. Now listen, Damon Lindelof is 50-50 to me. He's either spot on or he's spot off. Now a lot of people are not liking the Lanterns show. Mainly the hardcore Green Lantern fans are not liking the show. I take Damon Lindelof for what he is. He's gonna give you some truth mixed with a lot of BS and propaganda. That, once again, I'm not a fan of him being the spokesperson for black pain and black trauma. But you had a bunch of white folk that had never heard of the Tulsa Race Massacre. Okay, and I've been wanting to hear from them. Their mouths, like, why do they, and they keep bringing these shows up because anything Damon Lindelof is attached to, they use those two shows as their reference points as to why they hate Damon Lindelof. Okay, so now you hate him even more because now he's doing Lanterns and he's giving the middle finger to you Lanterns fans, and normies, general audiences are seemingly liking the show. I've said, if you're a hardcore Green Lantern person, you're going to hate this show. If you're a casual normie, you like the whole mystery cop, True Detective, this might work for you. This might work for you. Okay? So, who's the bigger demographic? Hardcore fans or normies? You Game of Thrones people, same thing. You hardcore fans, it's not enough of you. They're making content for the normies. They're making content for normies. You are not in their thought patterns or processes. They're not thinking about you when they make these adaptations and reimaginings. Okay? They're not thinking about you. You don't matter to a certain extent. Okay? So I want to hear from, we got to go back, and I want to hear directly from them why they hate these shows so effing. I mean, they hate these shows. You understand? You can hear the venom and vitriol out of their mouths every time they utter these shows. So let's go here. This is Nerdrotic. Okay, this one, okay, watch. This is like 6 years ago.
He has this ferocious moral integrity that has made him one of the most popular characters in the book.
Nerdrotic.com.
Rotten Tomatoes still remains the best place to expose access media hypocrisy. And it's gotten so bad at this point, especially when it comes to the latest division between audience and critics, the Watchmen, that I am from now on going to call them hypocritics. But before I get started, if you like what I do here, please consider subscribing to the channel. YouTube benefit independent creators. So if you could like YouTuber, would appreciate it. And thank you to all who have done that. Were worried that the Joker would incite incel sleeper violence. Yes, they were so worried that they wrote article after article on it. And I would like to thank Vulture and IO9 and Vox for being so concerned about my safety. Vox went as far as to say some critics also voiced this concern about how the movie portrays violence, especially violence that is so intertwined with our own realities in their reviews. Certainly, that can't be the case for The Watchmen. Based on their logic, Civil War Part 2 should have started last Sunday, and it didn't. Why? Because they weren't concerned about it, because it played to their narrative, and they weren't worried about our safety at all. Because, and so do we.
Check this out. I'm going to show you how I...
Hey, I apologize, y'all, for that.
$15.
I apologize. Lo siento. Okay, let's go.
Extremely happy that The Watchmen is the Wokeman, to the tune of 96% and 95% when it comes to top critics. And The Joker has recently lost its certified fresh rating because the critics have decided to turn on it. They have gone so far as to call it a right-wing film. And it's no wonder that Todd Phillips called out the woke media, and good for him, because that is the David Chappelle effect. And that is something the access media and the hypocritics aren't even aware of. And that is the importance of interacting with your audience. So maybe you should turn on those comment sections. And just a friendly reminder, these are the same hypocritics who like the Batwoman more than they liked Joker. And I went over this in detail in a video right here.
I want to get to the
critics,
Watchmen.
they are lapping this out their hypocrisy, their spin. The Joker is glorifying violence. Well, I watched the Joker 3 times now, and quite frankly, it's not as violent as I thought it would be. I've seen much more violent films, and I can say The Watchmen is more violent than the Joker in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways, their violence is exploitive to push a narrative.
So when white showrunners and white writers show how violent white men are, it's a problem. Right? So when their own kind peels back the curtain, shines a spotlight on how just depraved white men are, white people in general, they get upset. And that's what Damon Lindelof pretty much has done with The Watchmen and Lovecraft Country. They just peeled back. It's like, hey, you want to take a look? You want to see a dead body? There you go. And white men like Gary and geeks and gamers hate it. They hate when their own kind gets exposed by their own kind.
And it can be argued it's a dangerous narrative if you are of the access media and hypocritic mindset. But I'm not here to debate the violence of either show. None of it bothers me because it's fake. It's not real. It is a fictional story based in a superhero world, which is a violent world. As per usual, the hypocritics remain the most unself-aware people in the world. As a normal, rational person, I don't know how you can watch The Joker and Watchmen and think one is glorifying violence and one is not. One is exploiting violence and one is not. The Watchmen take an actual violent historical event and exploit it for their narrative. And I will get into that later on in the video. And this is going to have to double as my Watchmen review as well. I did a big long live stream with Dictor Van Doomcock. The link will be in the description, as I did with my Watchmen compared to what they thought of the Joker. First, we go to a top critic, David Sims, from the pinnacle of impartial journalism, The Atlantic. On Watchmen, Lindelof's show is a marriage of pulpy myth-making and grim reality, telling a weighty story under the guise of mass-market entertainment. Now, hard stop right there. The Watchmen is not mass-market entertainment, although some of the suits and bankers at AT&T and WB might think it's that way, and that's probably how Damon Lindelof sold it to him, but it is an Alan Moore story meant to be a one and done. The ending was meant to be left to your imagination, and what Damon Lindelof probably...
So how the Watchmen comics end is there's a conversation between Regina's character and Dr. Manhattan in the kitchen about eggs. And she asks the question, if you left a piece of you in these eggs or whatever, and I consume that egg with your essence in it, would I become you or would I have your powers? He's like, there's only one way to find out. Go to the last episode. Dr. Manhattan pretty much tells her, hey, my fate's sealed. I'm gonna die. There's nothing you can do to stop it. She's been racking her brain trying to fix it and trying to change the history, the timeline. It doesn't happen. It fails. He dies. And at the very end, she goes into the refrigerator and sees those eggs, and she cracks open the egg, ingests the egg, and then she goes out to the swimming pool and takes a step on the water. And right before she takes a step on the water, cut to black. That's how the comics end. Just like that. Leaving your mind to wander. I think she does consume his power. I think she does become the next Dr. Manhattan. Okay? Anytime the black folk get to survive and pass on, they hate that shit. And then mind you, like I said, white folk brought you this version of the Watchmen. Okay? But let's continue.
Sold is that this was going to be a reinterpretation of it. They initially sold it to us that Watchmen was not going to be a remake or a sequel. It was going to be a remix, which I think it still is. But for reasons unknown, Damon Lindelof has changed his tune to the hypocritics in the Access media and now is calling it a direct sequel to Alan Moore's comic books, which is ambitious. But unfortunately, Damon Lindelof, being of the school of bad reboot, is all about style and no substance and is the wrong person to take on anything by Alan Moore. But he has gone ahead and done it anyway. So now you are watching a sequel to a TV show you've never watched because obviously comic books are a different...
Hey, guess what? Black folks didn't ask for these shows. Black folks didn't read the Watchmen comics. You didn't watch that shit. You don't know H.P. Lovecraft's work. You don't know about Cthulhu. Black folk aren't into that stuff. I mean, the small percentage. If you're into the occult, then you understand the great sleeper that he sleeps and Cthulhu is sleeping and all this is reality, that it's his dream, and the moment he wakes up this all goes away. Nonetheless, the majority of black folks have never read the Watchmen comics, have never read anything from H.P. Lovecraft. You didn't even realize that H.R. Geiger got his inspiration for the alien from H.P. Lovecraft. So when you hear the term Lovecraftian, it's Lovecraftian. That's a node to H.P. Lovecraft, where he inspired the whole goddamn wave of this sci-fi reality, right? Okay, nonetheless, I'm trying to give y'all a backstory because some of y'all never heard this shit before. And like I said, black folk weren't asking for a Watchmen series or a Lovecraft Country series. Okay, let's continue.
Medium. Now, as most of you may know, the original Watchmen takes place in New York City with the backdrop of impending annihilation through thermonuclear war. That was the true danger of our time. That was on the minds of everybody during the 80s. Duck and cover drills were still happening in elementary schools. I know because I went through some. What's the equivalent now of impending nuclear war? What's creating the big cultural anxiety? For me, it's the anxiety of a reckoning. Lindelof said in an interview with the New York Times, the identification of white supremacy as a bad guy in a superhero comic book that could not be defeated. With all things, with anybody who was ever involved with bad reboot, soft reboots have become the thing. And that's what this Watchmen TV series is. It's following the beats of the original Watchmen, so it needs a similar backdrop. And according to Damon Lindelof, an equal threat to annihilation by thermonuclear war is white supremacy. Yes, I remember my kid complaining about all those white...
he bleeped out the white... Yeah, the white supremacists wanted to capture Dr. Manhattan and use him as a weapon. They built this big ass cube with all these different thermodynamic properties to contain Dr. Manhattan. They wanted to catch him, contain him, and use him as a weapon. And they happened to be white supremacists. And then Don Johnson, his granddaddy was a grand dragon. When Regina goes into his office, sees the hood and cloak in his office. Anytime White men expose their own kind. Peons like Gary and Geeks and Gamers and Midnight Drinker, they have a problem with that. Well, I don't understand. Why do you have a problem with your own exposing how just dastardly you people are at your very core? I don't understand. What's the problem with that? We all know how you are. God forbid you give black folks a happy ending in any of your stories that we didn't ask for. But let's continue.
Supremacy duck and cover emergency drills he's going through at school. The Klan wears masks, but why are its members never the villains in a superhero story? I'm questioning how many comic books Damon Lindelof has actually read. Moore's opus was about...
Never do this with an older...
Oh, these fucking ads. I'm sorry for the ads. But this is a learning lesson. We're here to learn. Okay? We're here to learn. Get out of here, cat.
To which people place their trust in costumed Avengers and ask the age-old question of who watches the Watchmen. Lindelof's Watchmen takes the comic's most potent symbol, the mask, and shows how it can protect not only superheroes, but also the flawed institutions Americans rely on. Again, I am not debating the politics or the violence within either of these properties. Neither offends me at all. I am just pointing out that these are simply hypocritics. I don't have a problem with anything being put in art if it's interpreted well. And all art, especially television, when they are doing historical dramas or even alternate history, you are exploiting the real history. You are exploiting the victims of whatever violence occurred. David Sims is praising the opening scene of Watchmen, which takes place during the massacre of 1921 in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Again, it was a real horrific historic event where real people died, and it's being exploited for a superhero TV show. But
sir, y'all exploit everything else, everything about black folks you've been exploiting. We're over it. Why do you have such a problem with it? I never understood that. Mind you, this is from 6 years ago. He's upset at a bunch of white men reenacting a true historical fact. Why are you you're upset because it's exploitative? Sir, you exploit everything. Everything about your very existence is exploitive. You've created nothing. You've created nothing. Everywhere you go, you've stolen. You've stolen everything. Every invention you claim you credit for, you've stolen from somebody. You exploit everything. You derive from a culture of exploitation. You are the walking embodiment of exploitation. What the fuck are we talking about?
he's totally okay with that. He's also totally okay with the Rorschach gang breaking out a 50 caliber gun and mowing down people and cattle. That wasn't gratuitous violence. That wasn't glorifying violence at all. But what he says about the Joker, as Joker gets grimmer and descends further into bloody violence, it becomes little more than a horror show, bludgeoning its viewers out of any chance at insight. Oh, but wait, there's more. Barry Hertz from Globe and Mail. Shockingly, this new Watchmen is not only good, not only great, it's absolutely necessary. HBO's Watchmen is just that insightful, invigorating, and essential. And made for critics. Again, you see how much they are lapping it up, but let's just see what Barry Hertz thinks about the Joker. Honestly, I'm not sure what the Joker is here for, other than to cause a clumsily manufactured uproar. I love when Access Media members and hypocritics present their arguments as if they're outside of the discourse, outside of the culture war. Brian Lowry from CNN, and I know he didn't like the Joker, but on Watchmen, presents its own kind of Rorschach test. Occasionally frustrating and meandering, okay. I'll agree with that.
I know I'm gonna get hit for it, but let's go look for that opening scene, yeah? HBO, Watchmen, Tulsa scene. Let's see if we can find that scene. I'll take the hit. I will take the hit. I will take the hit. Here we go. Let's go here. Now, I'll be the first to admit, if you're going to do violence and reenact historical violence, give us the ugly, gritty, disgusting, disturbing, why humans don't deserve to exist, or you need a reason to re-hate white people all over again. Yeah, give me that. If you're going to reenact tragic historical stories involving black pain and trauma caused by white people, give me a reason to walk out this house and want to punch the first white person I see in the face. Yes, give me that. I'm here for it. I'm here for it. remember correctly, this was Regina's character. Her granddaddy is the little boy. So played by Lou Gossett Jr. This is him. This is what he went through, okay? But let's continue. You see them stealing the clothes, trying on the clothes. Trust me, it's a way longer scene, and the very opening part of the scene is horrific. Is horrific. Does it give me more? Does it give me more?